Well, hello, and thanks for joining us for a conversation with the early ed and nursery families. And I just put some things down there to help us to kind of gauge our conversation today. I know as a staff, we've thought about, what can we learn from this year? And parents are doing the same thing. So I just said, feel free to jot down some ideas. I'll kind of give an overview of any structures that you think that have been helpful that we've been doing this year that you say we want to keep that afterwards, and so the early ed and the nursery staff can think about what are things that have really worked well for you. Share activities that you loved that will be helpful to continue. Share any new procedures that you'd recommend should be ongoing. If you don't like an idea that someone else brings up, we just ask that you gracefully share another idea that you think might work better so that we give everyone a full chance to have a voice in the conversation. If you have any specific thoughts about, your child or your child's learning or their studio, those are probably best had with the individual teachers. Of course, I can support that as well, but we really encourage you to reach out to them for that. We surely don't want to talk about individual kiddos right now on this conversation with a large group of people. But most certainly there's things that all of you feel like have worked well, and we really want to hear those things. I think all of the staff feel like we've become kind of tech ninjas this year, and some of that's been good, and we've learned things that have been really helpful, and we've learned things that didn't work as well. The early ed staff really, we shifted some things about a month after we hit the ground running in the fall, and made some off-campus support more specified to help just with those families. But you might say some of the things you've learned in being in either one of those options might be helpful moving forward. So we would love to know more about that. So we've also, we sure, you might say this would be better to have more of this or less of this, or and so we want to know about that too. One of the things that the staff has thought about already, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback from families, is about PPCs, being able to have an option to do those virtually. And so that is something we want to keep moving forward. We haven't decided how that will work, if there'll be an option or all of that, but we really think that would be a terrific addition, especially for families that they're working and trying to get off and schedule all that. I know could be a lot. And now we've learned that we could do these things, and we could all talk in front of a camera, and we're not going to melt away. So it's good information to know. So I'm going to ask, you're welcome to just speak if you want to, and share something you feel like we should really consider keeping next year or whenever this new normal begins. And because we want to start planning for it, we're all hopeful that the new normal will happen in this coming year. So, let Melissa go ahead and turn the chat on. So if you'd rather make a comment in that way, if you'd like to just speak to the group, just think about, again, not mentioning anything about a specific child or a studio. Our focus really is on, what has worked well that we want to keep moving forward. So thank you again for coming. And some of the early ed staff and nursery staff is on here as well. And so they might ask some clarifying questions if you bring up something that they're not sure what you mean by that, so that we can really use this information moving forward. So anybody have anything that they're thinking of right now that would be helpful for us to consider?
We already had one comment in the chat that said the earlier start time this year is great.
Oh yeah, that is definitely something that's going to stay. We have changed that permanently. So thank you very much. I'm glad that you feel that way. And I think that the early ed staff has found that really, really helpful too.
There's another one that says loving the classroom how-to videos for the Nurtury.
Yes. So I know Becky and Emily and Sarah, Becky, Renee, and Sarah have worked really hard on, this is something we've always wanted to do more of, and now we found the time to do it. And so it might be a challenge moving forward, finding the time to do it and keep it fresh, but trying to think about how useful it is. we'll just try to make sure that we schedule some time to do those things in a regular way.
We have liked being able to use the lessons on weekends and evenings. Having lessons available when school gets back to full time would be great.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard families say that too, that sometimes Sunday afternoon, it's good to just get on there and read a book, even by the teacher that is familiar to them. Sometimes it just changes the rhythm of the day. So that's good, important to know. Thank you for sharing that. A town hall means you can speak to. Yes, it does. Feel free. And early ed staff, if there's anything you want to ask families, if it's something that you've been thinking about moving forward, I know that some of the levels will be talking about whether we make a distance learning option after things become whatever the new normal is. And so I know that we've had some families that have chosen to be off campus all year. And so, I'm just curious if people think that that's something that they want to see at this level at all. No thoughts on that. Early ed staff, any other clarifying thoughts that you have that you were thinking about? I think one of the things that we talked about, whether we've never really got to do it. Well, we actually haven't got to do it at all this year, but the Wednesday outdoor learning days, that was a thing that we wondered if we wanted to keep moving forward. And obviously, outdoor learning during a pandemic is helpful because I think the belief is still true that it's better to be outside than indoors, but all those beliefs change all the time, right? But we were curious, if that was something we wanted to continue, and so we've kind of bought some merchandise to help us, like some wagons and things, and kind of first aid kits to help with outdoor learning and kind of spread out throughout. And so I just, any thoughts from I know the Nurtury is outside a lot, and early ed does go outside a lot, but wondering what people think about an outdoor learning day.
I'll speak as a parent and not as an early ed staff. I think back before I was hired, when we had considered enrolling Wild at community, that was one of the things that drew me to the school, was like just the more opportunities for being able to go outside. So I think, like Kara just said in the chat, the more opportunity for outside time, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'd love to keep outdoor Wednesdays.
Yeah. There we go. There was the wording.
Hey, Melissa, you're muted, but I think you're talking.
Sorry about that. We had a couple pop in right when she started talking. One was, I've enjoyed being able to be more involved with my child's education. I'd love to see continued opportunities to keep parents involved. Love as much outside as time as possible. Another supporting going outside and just learning happens everywhere. Another supporting outdoor education will be great. My only concern is whether outdoor and nature learning opportunities sound great. And another agree is Nurtury parent, love them to be outside as much as possible any day of the week. Love the outside learning. Lots of support for outside learning.
So there was a comment about weather. Go ahead, Kara. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I was going to change the subject, so go ahead.
Sure. No, go ahead.
The classroom platform, of course, has been great. And we have Amy and Alex in Pentagon. Totally love having that access. And also, as I think Rob or someone said, being able to have access to that nights and weekends, whether we're catching up or need other activities to do. One of the challenges of that, but also Amy and Alex have helped us overcome this, is because there's such a wide gap of the 3+ years in one studio, sometimes I'm overwhelmed by what's in classroom and I don't know what's best for my child, who happens to be one of the absolute oldest in Pentagon right now. And so sometimes I'm going through these lessons and then I'm like, he's past that. He's past that. Okay, we don't need to repeat that one, you know? And so Amy's definitely messaged me a few that says, oh, I know Everett so well, and this would be great for him, you know? But if the teachers could also just put some kind of indicator or ID, which ones are more advanced or more beginner, and I don't use the Montessori language. I'm sorry, you guys probably have better wording on that. But just giving a little bit more guidance, because it becomes overwhelming over time, especially when I'm just looking for something like, okay, I have him for the next hour. What should we do? And then I spend 30 minutes looking for something that's at his level, you know, because I didn't plan appropriately before the day started, right? We're trying to jump in and do the best we can. But anyway, they've done a great job at helping me identify that. And so maybe moving forward with anything posted in those kind of platforms, if you can ID that, it helps the parents get to the right place faster.
Thank you. Helpful. Any clarifying questions or anything the early ed staff wants to say about that?
I'll just say, this is Tennille from Quatrefoil. Kara, that was very helpful, that information, because we've been thinking that as well, but we've been just trying to figure out what is it that would make it better. So we're working on it. Thank you.
Any other things to share, thoughts, or other suggestions that would be helpful as we move forward to planning for, you know, the new normal and little pitter-patterings of feet?
I hope you guys have heard it from all the parents, but y'all are rock stars.
Thanks, Kara.
So just want to let you know that now we know more than ever what you do and how you do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Yeah. Yeah, I'll second that. Bless their hearts. I know when we came back last week, and those rooms looked like they had been functioning for all year long. So just, you know, day one back in, and, you know, everyone wanted to be back in that space. So we're all so hopeful, you know, of moving back in that direction as soon as possible.
Just another chat comment of everyone has been amazing, and thank you.
Anyone else have a comment to share, or some ideas that you've been thinking about, or that would be helpful for us to know as we plan forward?
I've been asked by a few parents, I think maybe from other levels, that they're doing one-on-one virtual with some of the children. And I don't know that everyone is doing that, or maybe it's by studio, but it would be pretty awesome if our kids got maybe even once a month when we are virtual, or moving forward. I don't know. I guess you guys are probably doing that in the classroom, but we're not doing the one-on-one video time. They're small groups, which is good. But of course, at 5 and 6 years old, they're very easily distracted as well. So sometimes I wonder if, could he get 20 minutes with the teachers by himself, kind of thing. So I don't know. I just bring that up knowing that I think different studios are doing different things. So I'd be curious to know if the other early ed groups were doing that, if they tried it, it didn't work, or if it would be helpful even just for the next few weeks to try to do some one-on-ones and check in with the kiddos and things like that. I don't know. It was just an idea that came up from other people saying their kids were having one-on-ones, and I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what early ed can surely answer that if anyone wants to in a minute. I'll share that in the levels, usually starting at the 6 to 9, but more in the 9 to 12 and up, they have what's called advisory sessions. And so where the child meets with one of the teachers and kind of reviews with them what their lessons look like and talks through any concerns they have or any support they would like. And so that's usually how that part happens when they're older, is those kind of conversations. Early ed, anybody else want to share about her suggestion?
Mary, I
There's Mary.
I think it's very much like what we do in normal years in the studio care, where we look at the child, and some of them do great in small groups, and some of them really need one-on-one. And we're learning that through this format too. It's very much the same way we look at everything. We just look at what the child needs, and where the child is in their development. So sometimes, this is the last thing we want a young 3-year-old to be doing, is looking at a screen, even if it is with us. It's just not the same, right? We know that. We've learned that. It's been almost a year. This is just not the same, especially for the youngest of the young. So as much as, that sounds great, it's not great for all of them. And it's certainly, even for a kindergartner, we don't want them near on the computer all the time. But yeah, we have noticed some of them, attend better if it's one-on-one, or, we're just trying to get through some part of the curriculum before they move up to another level, so it's so many different factors. And we really have to know them and get to know them and have built a rapport, which took forever this year too. Right?
Yeah, and I think, all of the early ed studios, and correct me if I'm wrong, are doing some individualized lessons with some children based on those needs. For some children, that's how you build a rapport. And for others, they are embarrassed. They don't want to get on. What makes them feel the most comfortable is if X friend or Y friend is in the space, even though, I can imagine as a parent, it might feel like they aren't getting the learning they need, but we have to look at the whole child too. So, but I think it's good to know that, for some families, they might feel like their child needs something different. And I encourage all of us to reach out to those teachers individually and say, just FYI, I really feel like my child could utilize some of this. What are your thoughts? And you will get a very professional and straight up conversation from them. I am confident.
There was kind of a nice tag on it. Was there before Mary said what she said about like preparing for specific things, but someone asked, as a kindergartner mom, I would love to have some more info about, and this is in quotes, first grade readiness.
Mm-hmm. So feeling like, if their child is in a kinder, what that looks like, and are they ready to move on, I guess is the question.
That seems to be the tone, but certainly, Carrie, if you want to clarify in the chat, I can read it out or speak if you'd like.
So it might be best, just from what I gained from that question, is to talk specifically with the teacher about that. Although we know what we hope, like 80% about, it'll probably be a little less than that this year, of our kinders that are moving to first level are decoding 3-letter words, can say cat when they see it, etc. And are utilizing numeration in multiple ways, from counting to 20 or 100, and to do some simple addition with materials or with paper when they're ready for that. And so there's things like that. And of course, what we see as Montessorians is the number one thing at both the nursery and the early childhood is that we're working towards is independence. And so we know that when a child can, self-soothe, they can problem solve independently, they can work through struggle. Like, all of those are what we find are the most important foundations for them moving on to the 6 to 9 program. Anything else you want to add, early ed staff?
Just that this is what we'll be talking about at the February TPC for those that are ready to move up, right? We'll be talking about that. February and in May.
And for most, you've already had those conversations by now. So if you haven't had that conversation with your teacher by now, then they're not concerned about them moving forward. And that doesn't mean that anything's a pure science. It is, kids at this age, both of these ages, change so much in just a few short months. So.
Assuming that the numbers get better, do you think that the kindergartners will have a chance to do the classroom visits, or has that been taken off the table, or like the year-end transition?
Yeah, I mean, I think, off the cuff right now, I think that the goal would be to at least walk down into those spaces and stand in the hallway. That unless things got immeasurably back to normal, I can't imagine we'd put them in other studios just for the whole separation of that piece. But at least, and that was a big part of the transition last year. It was always the first step for the early ed staff, is to walk them down and just stand on the periphery and talk about, this is the studio and this is what they're doing, and watching, from that process. So I think that part can still happen this year. Early ed staff, any other thoughts on that?
I agree, Barbara. I think even because early ed has been in when a lot of the elementary hasn't, so even walking into the room and just taking a tour of it without other children in would give those kindergartners a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kara, there's a comment over there for you in the chat too, if you didn't click over and take a look. I don't have any new ones right now, unless people want to say.
Sure.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Mine's a little bit more about the switch from Zoom to what we're using now. What is it? Google, I think we're using now.
Google Meet. Yep.
Yeah. For whatever reason, it's causing us to be limited on which devices we can actually call in for. So like my cell phone and my wife's work laptop seem to be the only ones that we can get going from your link. So the main question is, when we try the other devices, we seem to get some other questions about like PIN codes and things like that. And so these just work, like Mike said, my cell phone, for example, just works by hitting the link and only. But is there somewhere on your community website that we can get the PIN, or do we have to ask the individual teacher to send us that, or how does that work?
Well, it's a fantastic question that I don't know the answer to. Has anyone else experienced that before or have an answer that's on the call?
By PIN, do you mean a password? If it's asking a password for you to log in?
I'm sorry, say that again.
When you say PIN, do you mean a password? If it's asking a password for you to log in.
No, it actually says PIN.
Huh.
And so I was like, that's the first time I've come across that dealing with any of these calls. So I thought maybe it was
Yeah.
something that someone else had run into. But like I said, when I use my cell phone or my wife's work laptop, we just click your link and it works fine. So I don't know if it's an update that's needed on those other devices or something, but it's asking for a PIN. So I was like, well, maybe it exists and we just haven't needed it prior to this.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there was a comment from another parent in the chat that says for them, it was who the invite was sent to. They had to ask to have their parent email invited is the way. So like given access on the different devices. So that's one proposed solution maybe is to who the link has been potentially invited or shared with. Teachers, maybe if you're using children's emails or something. Just a suggestion in the chat from the parent.
So
sorry.
Go ahead, Sam.
I was going to say it might be a Chromebook issue. I don't know if your child was trying to use a school issued Chromebook because that happened with a couple of my families. No? Okay.
Is this just for this meeting today?
No. The weekly meetings. So
okay, all of them. Okay.
So there's been times where I work third shift, so generally I'm the one that's home when we do the morning. So she'll be using my cell phone. Most of the time it's no big deal for her to do the meeting, but every now and then I'm expecting a call or something, and I just keep thinking this is going to be real bad that day that an important call happens and she has to give me the phone or something.
Right. What is your name?
Kenyatta Parks.
Okay, I'm going to have Glenn just follow up with you to see if he has any ideas about that. I don't. We're probably not the right people to be asking right now, but maybe Glenn Prana could talk through that and figure out if there's a solution. Great, thank you.
Do you have a school issued Chromebook just to check with you? Like, did you request one from the school?
No.
Okay, that might be the first step in getting one for you, so you can pick it up from the school. I can talk to Glenn and have that arranged.
Okay.
That's the quick solution.
Yeah, we just felt like we have so many devices in the house. We just figured let's let someone that didn't have one have those.
Right.
But
Yeah,
if you have extras, maybe that is the best solution.
Maybe we can ask Danielle because it seems to be a Google Meet thing because I have both Kenyatta and Salita in there in Google Meet in our classroom. So I'm not sure why any of their devices wouldn't work. So they're both been invited and accepted in our Google Classroom. So yeah, we have a technology team we can throw us to, right?
Thanks for letting us know that. And it might be a good idea, and I think about that moving forward, is to kind of have an FAQ on our website for families or even on the studio level sites that kind of say, if this has happened, do this, if who to contact. So that's something else that we can work on. Thank you. Any other thoughts that haven't come out our mouths yet that we think we should think about for these youngest of our youngest learners? Well, we really appreciate everyone's time today and popping on and listening and sharing, and that's really helpful to us. And if something comes in your mind later, please don't hesitate. Reach out to me or to the teachers. Any of us can gather that information so that we can use it moving forward. And I'll stay on for a minute if anyone had thought of anything after this. So thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.